Fight fam, what it do? So we are back with another fight prediction today. We're going to be talking about the MVP Prospects 14 card that will be occurring this weekend in Orlando, Florida. It's actually 2 days of fights. So we're going to talk about the main event for this Friday, and that is going to be Jan Paul Rivera versus Daniel Bailey. So I'm going to break down the fight, break down the stats of each individual fighter, give you all my prediction for the fight, and I will be letting you all know if I'm going to be betting on this fight. Now, MVP, as most of you all know, Most Valuable Promotions, that is Jake Paul's promotion company. I think Jake Paul is doing a great thing for boxing. He's not only fighting, but he's building out a promotion company, giving a lot of these athletes opportunities to fight on big platforms and make a lot of money. So this particular card, the main event, Jan Paul Rivera, is a MVP athlete. Now, something I noticed from watching Jake Paul cards, some promotions you will notice that they favor their fighter, but most valuable promotions, their cards typically they call the fights really how they see it. There's no favoritism, and they match their guys up tough. So if you make it on the MVP card, then you really earn those stripes, and I appreciate that because they have great matchmaking. These guys are not going out and fighting tomato cans. So this main event here on Friday is going to be a banger. So Daniel Bailey, I don't know him personally, but I'm in Tampa, Florida. I know at one point he did live in Tampa. I know the coach who he used to train with in Tampa, and I know that coach's fighters, their conditioning is top tier. All of his guys are tough. They have great technique and amazing skill. Now, as far as I know, Daniel Bailey is now in Miami or in South Florida. I don't know exactly where he is, so I'm not sure who he trained with or who his coaches are currently. But I did want to get that little background there, how I am familiar with Daniel Bailey. As you all know, I am a strength and conditioning coach for boxers and MMA fighters. So if somebody's fighting out of Tampa, I don't know everybody, but I may have heard of people if they trained here or somewhere close to the Tampa area. All right, so we're going to look at each individual fighter now, compare their stats, and then we're going to break this fight down. All right, Jan Paul Rivera, he is 12 and 0 from Puerto Rico. Fights at 126 pounds, 24 years old. He is 5'5", and his reach is 68.5 inches. Daniel Bailey, he is 15 and 2, fighting out of Tampa, Florida, although I think he's in South Florida now. I think he's in Miami if I'm not mistaken. 29 years old. His last weight for his last fight was 132 pounds. He is 5 feet 8 inches, and his reach is 69 inches. So he has a half an inch reach advantage and a 3-inch height advantage. Now, something that I want to call out here with that 15 and 2, if you look at his tapology, he did fight in the Combat League. So the Combat League is more of like of a exhibition style. You know, you still have pro guys fighting, but they're fighting each other for one round, and then you have a team. So you're kind of cycling people in to fight. It's not a flat out fight. So I'm not sure how many of his fights in his record are from Team Combat League or if that's even reflected in his record, but I just wanted to call that out. All right, so Jan Paul Rivera, he is a great all around boxer. He has great technical skills, has a very strong right hand. He's going to be looking to land that right hand on Daniel Bailey. Daniel Bailey, he is a game opponent. He has great defense, and he's going to be looking to counterpunch. Now, with Jan Paul Rivera, he does get in exchanges, and in those exchanges, you can hit him in between the shots. However, Jan Paul Rivera does have a chin. He can take a shot, so he's not afraid to take a shot, to give a shot in return. So there's been fights where he got hit with a good shot, and he continues to come forward, and he ends up dropping the guy after that. So you really have to be careful of that right hand. Something that I also like with Jan Paul Rivera, he does a great job at changing levels. So he works the head, the body. You know, he's looking to break you down. He doesn't just head hunt and force the issue. He takes his time. He's patient in the ring, and when it's time to go on the attack, that's exactly what he does. Now with Daniel Bailey, he has decent technical skills. I would say that Jan Paul Rivera is definitely a better technical boxer. I would say that he's stronger, but I think that Daniel Bailey has great counterpunching and he has great speed. However, I think Jan Paul Rivera beats him in that department as well. So everything that Daniel Bailey is good at, I think Jan Paul Rivera is just a little bit better. And with Daniel Bailey being 29 years old, his last fight was in July of 2024. So this will be his first fight in over a year. And he fought two times. He fought July 1st, 2024. Then he fought 4 days later, July 5th, 2024. And he fought both of those fights in Colombia. So he did that after a unanimous decision loss to Edward Vasquez. Well, Edward Vasquez, he's a dog. He's tough. Then he went and got those two fights in Colombia. That was last July. And the fights in Colombia, those were honestly just to pick up some wins. So you have to look into who these guys are fighting that's going towards their record. And he got two knockouts. I mean, he's going to Colombia, getting some quick wins, but then there's nothing after that. So I'm not sure why he has not fought in over a year. But what I will say is Jan Paul Rivera has been very active with MVP. Jake Paul speaks highly of Jan Paul Rivera. And the fact that he's been active, he's also been fighting tough competition. He's been fighting guys with one loss, no losses. Some guys maybe have a couple losses, but he's fighting game opponents and he's fighting right here in the States. He's not going over to Colombia to pick up some wins after a loss. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you got to kind of read between the lines when you're breaking down a fight. So my prediction for this fight is Jan Paul Rivera. I'm going to look at the odds. So initially I was leaning Jan Paul Rivera by decision, but the more I looked at film and then I saw that Daniel Bailey has not fought since last July in Colombia, I'm leaning towards Jan Paul Rivera potentially stopping him. But let's take a look at the odds. So on Hard Rock, we do not have the odds yet as usual, which is very strange considering these fights are in Florida. So I would think Hard Rock would have the odds up, but they don't. All right, so let's look at the betting lines for this fight. Let's pull up FanDuel because I know a lot of people that are outside of Florida actually do have FanDuel. All right, let's see. Let's see what we got. Wow. Minus 1100 for Jan Paul Rivera and plus 540 for Daniel Bailey. So I think those odds are fairly accurate. I just said wow because when I initially looked at it, it was like minus 950. But that may have been a different sport book that I checked. But FanDuel is like they on the money. So far they just have a money line bet on this fight. I will be doing a parlay, but I'm going to hope that the Hard Rock odds are less than minus 1100. I think Jan Paul Rivera wins this fight easily and continues to climb the ladder for the MVP prospects. So let me know what you all think of this fight down below. Do you all think this is a competitive fight? I just think Jan Paul Rivera, he's been more active. He's the younger, he's a fresher fighter. And I want to add that Daniel Bailey is coming down in weight for this fight. So his fight that he fought a year ago, he weighed in. Let's go ahead and pull up his weight. I noticed this also. Now he's fought at 126 before, but in his last couple fights, they were not at 126. So when the guy is coming down in weight, I do not like to see that because it's like, what is the reason? Yeah, so the weight for his last fight in Colombia was 132 pounds. And that was July 5th of last year. And then his weight on July 1st of last year in Colombia. Let's see if it was around that same weight. I'm just curious to see because I'm like, if he's dropping weight for this fight, we could see Jan Paul Rivera win this fight by a knockout here. And then for the fight on July 1st, 2024, he was 140 pounds. Yeah, so I have Jan Paul Rivera. I'm not even going to say decision. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Let's make it interesting. I got Jan Paul Rivera beating Daniel Bailey by a KO or TKO this Friday, August 22nd in Orlando, Florida. Drop your predictions down below. Do you think this will be a close and competitive fight? Or do you think Jan Paul Rivera is just on another level? Or do you think Daniel Bailey is going to pull off the upset? Like the video, share the video, subscribe to this channel, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.